Here's what's coming up on The World Today. UK Prime Minister holds talks with Ukraine's president in Kyiv over Russia military buildup. United Nations says Myanmar military committing crimes against humanity. Plus, Britain's last Prime Minister Boris Johnson over lockdown parties call for his resignation. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin with developments to do with the Ukraine conflict. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is holding talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. According to reports, the Prime Minister will offer £88 million in new UK aid to support Ukraine amid fears of an invasion by Russia. Earlier, the Ukrainian president, speaking in parliament, praised Western countries for backing his country in the face of Russia's military buildup and announced an expansion of the army.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a decree to increase the size of Ukraine's armed forces by 100,000 troops over 3 years. He says the presidential decree was prepared not because Ukraine expects soon to be at war, but to ensure peace in the future. He also told Parliament that a new format of political cooperation was being created with the United Kingdom and Poland. After Zelensky finished speaking, lawmakers gathered in the well of the chamber, holding up flags of countries that have shown their support, including Britain and Canada. There are currently nearly 250,000 people in Ukraine's armed forces, which are vastly outnumbered and outgunned by Russia's. NATO member states have rallied round Ukraine in recent weeks, with the United States, Britain and Poland among countries offering military aid. Meanwhile, earlier tension between Russia and the United States over Moscow's troop buildup near Ukraine spilled into the United Nations Security Council when diplomats for both countries fiercely outlined their positions. The Security Council has met dozens of times over the crisis in Ukraine since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. It is unable to take any action as Russia is one of the Council's 5 veto powers, along with the United States, China, France, and Britain.
And over in Myanmar, the United Nations says the military leaders have murdered and tortured civilians while waging a campaign of terror in the year since taking power. Tom Andrews, the UN human rights expert on Myanmar, has called for tightening of sanctions against the country. At least 1,500 people are known to have been killed in the year-long protest against the coup, with thousands more possibly killed in the armed conflict, according to the UN Human Rights Office.
Today, 1 year after the attempted coup was launched, I am urging all of us, member states of the United Nations, and everyone who cares about human rights, justice, and decency, to take a moment to reflect on what has transpired in the last 12 months within Myanmar and the international response. I am strongly recommending that we consider a new, more robust course of action before it is too late. The military is committing crimes against humanity and war crimes against the people of Myanmar. And the world must recognize that behind the growing statistics, real people are suffering. Let's be clear. The military junta of Myanmar is functioning as a criminal enterprise, seizing the assets and stealing revenue that rightfully belong to the people of Myanmar. They are then using these resources to buy the means to systematically attack the people of Myanmar. This must be stopped.
Amnesty International says Israeli laws, policies and practices against Palestinians in Israel and the occupied territories amount to apartheid. A new report alleges that the Israeli state maintains a regime of oppression and domination of the Palestinian population for the benefit of Jewish Israelis. Apartheid is considered a crime against humanity under international law. Israel says it absolutely rejects what it calls all the false allegations in the report.
This report Amnesty International is here today to call on the authorities of Israel to put an end to the system of apartheid it is maintaining against all Palestinians living under their effective control, whether in Israel itself, in the OPT, or as refugees in other countries. We are here today to call on the international community to take resolute action against the crime of humanity being perpetrated in order to maintain the system of apartheid.
In the past, Amnesty was a respected organization, not anymore. Today it is precisely the opposite. It isn't a human rights organization, but just another radical organization which echoes propaganda without seriously checking the facts. Instead of seeking the truth, Amnesty echoes the same lies shared by terrorist organizations.
The Commission says the expulsion of France's ambassador to Mali is unjustified and will lead to the country being further cut off from EU member states. Mali on Monday gave the French ambassador 72 hours to leave the country after comments by former colonial power France about its transitional government. The French foreign minister had said on Friday last week that Mali's military leaders are out of control amid escalating tensions between the West African state and its EU partners following two military takeovers.
The Malian government's request for the immediate withdrawal of the French ambassador in Bamako is unjustified and will further alienate Mali from its European partners. The EU stands in solidarity with France and also with Denmark, whose contingent had been subject to a decision to leave. The current situation requires respect for commitment and dialogue on the part of the Malian authorities, and the negative spiral in which they have engaged can only be detrimental to the stability of the Mali itself, but also to the region.
A day after a report found that parties at the UK Prime Minister's offices and residence during the COVID-19 lockdown should never have taken place, some Londoners have expressed disappointment with the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Some people, including one who said he had voted for Boris Johnson's party, say the Prime Minister must resign. Prime Minister Johnson's personal ratings and support for his party have plummeted since revelations about parties emerged late last year, posing a serious threat to his leadership.
He's getting away with it. He's definitely getting away with it. I'm a Tory voter, but he's getting away with it. He needs to fall on his sword, do the right thing, and let people get back to a little bit of normality with politics, because what's gone on is pretty much abnormal for 10 Downing Street to behave like that at a time like this.
I think waiting for all the information is the right thing, I think, before any final decisions are made.
Bit disappointed that he ain't doing anything, but about this Partygate thing, it's just petty. He should be getting on with bigger things.
I think he should just go. I think that's it, yeah, for him. End of it for him. What do you think?
Yeah, same. He should just go. Just resign.
We're not impressed with him in Scotland.
Totally not.
I think it's quite disgusting, really, that he should behave in this way. It's a question of do what I say, not what I do. I think he should definitely resign.
Dr. Tokunbo Olanrudami, a political strategist and lecturer at Oxford Brookes University, joins us now for more. Dr. Olanrudami, thank you for your time on the programme. Looking at the Sue Gray report, do you think there's enough smoking gun here against the government and specifically the Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, Teniola, for having me again. And yes, there's more than enough smoking guns in this report. 16 parties or gathering, as you will have it, were investigated. 12 are now subject to further investigation, criminal investigation for that matter. That is enough smoking gun, if you ask me. So yes, there's enough in that report, and it's quite damning to be honest.
But the Prime Minister seems to be hanging on regardless. Yesterday, he apologised once again. How likely is this apology to save his political career, especially as we await the criminal investigation?
Teniola, you see, the last time we were talking about this, I mentioned that Boris is a very fine politician. I don't know anybody who is better at this game than Boris. He may survive, but it's not. The problem is not really in his survival, it's what it does to the British political system. It would be a big shame that this survival of Boris is pushed under the carpet. There is no explanation politically, morally, ethically, or otherwise that can justify the fact that a private party was held in the Prime Minister's residence while the whole nation was on lockdown. I mean, in the university environment, we know our students usually like to party, and there were some who actually went out partying, and the police went after them. What explanation do you give to young British folks that while they were being arrested, their Prime Minister was chilling with his own colleagues? It's not in the survival, but the aftermath and how damaging the repercussion will be on British system.
Yeah, and that actually begs the question that even if he does survive this, the public are just not happy. Will he be able to gain back their trust?
The current anger, I think, would decimate, and he probably, with what's going on in Ukraine right now, there's a slow stem of noise around COVID, and so Ukraine is the big one now. If he can find a way to build another storm, which he attempts to properly, perhaps his approval ratings will go up. They're quite low right now, but they're not as high as you would imagine. And the key issue right now is who will replace him. So there's some of the people who think, look, let him just do the job. We don't want to throw the whole system into pandemonium because of this, but this is really damning. It's a problem.
All right, then, Dr. Tokunbo Olanrudami, thank you so much for your thoughts on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Well, still to come on The World Today. China celebrates Lunar New Year, welcomes the year of the tiger with dazzling lights. More details in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. To an interesting development out of the United States, we're learning all federal prisons in the country have been placed on lockdown following a gang fight which left 2 inmates dead at a facility in Texas. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, 2 other prisoners were seriously injured in the violence at the high-security Beaumont facility on Monday, and they are responding with an abundance of caution, even though the lockdown is a temporary measure. The violence at the facility in Texas, which has a prison population of 1,372, reportedly involved members of the MS-13 street gang, a brutal group established in Los Angeles, which has roots in El Salvador. The Bureau of Prisons has 134 facilities housing more than 150,000 inmates around the United States. When prisons are placed on lockdown, it typically involves inmates being confined to their cells with restrictions placed on visitor access. Well, joining us now is our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, with more on this story. Maria, how often do fights break out in U.S. prisons?
Hello, Taniola. Yes, U.S. prisons quite frequently have some sort of a fight that breaks out as a result of whether or not it's something that happened prior to the individuals entering prison or something that's happened in prison. And so this is almost a daily occurrence in some prisons. And as you stated, there are federal prisons and then there's state-run prisons as well in the U.S. And so between those, probably on a daily basis, there will be some sort of, obviously not to the level of what you described happened obviously in this federal prison between the gangs, but there is some level of violence that occurs, which is hence why many prisons are maximum security prisons. It's all different levels of the type of prisons here in the U.S.
Well, what would a lockdown really mean for those inside the prison?
Well, what lockdown will mean for them is oftentimes in prisons you have times where they can whether or not go learn a trade. They can go out for, some time outside, whether or not it's some sports activities. Many times prisons will have individuals will be helping to clean up the sides of the roads. So different activities that they have. They even have some sort of a job type oftentimes within a prison system. So they have a very tight daily schedule, eating communally in a cafeteria environment. So those types of activities will be cut back when a prison is on lockdown. Individuals will probably be eating within their cells. They will not be able to go out and do any type of other interaction with other inmates. And so that really honestly creates a different type of morale within the prison, which already, as we know, when someone's in a prison system, their morale is obviously very low just due to the type of environment that exists in a prison system.
Well, the gang involved in the violence is the Mexican mafia, better known as MS-13, formed by immigrants who fled El Salvador's long and brutal civil war. It has up to 300 members in the prisons. How have officials managed to keep the peace inside these prisons?
Well, you have, you have wardens of a prison, you have security. I mean, these are heavily secure environments where individuals are being located in these prisons. And so when you see these prison systems and you ask, how are they able to keep any peace with that number of one gang in the prison? It's a very hard task. But again, you also have solitary confinement. Oftentimes, before someone is even an inmate even enters prison, they are aware of their background, so they know if they've been a part of a specific gang, and oftentimes they will try to ensure they're not in the same cells together. They're not even, sometimes often, if it's a federal prison, in the same federal prison environment, so that you can try to separate them as much as possible. But as you stated, with the large number of members of that gang, that does make it a bit difficult, and you do potentially have issues like what we see here that occurred and that created a major lockdown in all federal prisons. Because also remember that because you can communicate to the outside through prison, whether or not it's someone coming for a visit, phone calls, things like that, oftentimes there are things still occurring outside of the prison and between prisons that create quite a challenge for those guards and those officers that are within the prison system.
All right, then. Thanks a lot, Maria, for the update.
Thank you.
Back here in Nigeria, the U.S. Consulate General in Lagos has today launched its limited no-interview visa renewals to assist non-immigrant visa applicants in Nigeria who qualify to renew their visa. The additional visa policy, which differs from the previously known drop box that was stopped in 2019, applies to certain categories of visas guided by certain criteria, such as visa expired within the last 24 months or will expire in the next 3 months from the date of application. Previous visa was a full validity multiple entry visa, passport covering the entire period since receiving the previous visa, and the passport with the most recent visa.
Once you log in and you put in your visa fee, you'll have to answer a series of questions to make sure that you actually qualify for the program. And it's important you answer those truthfully, because if somebody is not too sure and doesn't have the correct information, we will not be able to accept it, and then you'll have already used your visa fee for the program, and you may not be able to find another visa appointment right away. After you do that, you'll print out a letter, which is what you'll take with you, and it tells you the date and time and everything you need to bring when you come to drop off your application for a renewal without an interview. You'll come here on that date and time, and just like you would if you're coming for an interview, you'll join us outside in our visa pavilion and submit all your documents. But instead of having to come in for an interview, that will be it. We'll process your application. It's important to note that not everyone who applies, even if they meet the criteria, will receive their visa without an interview. Like I was mentioning before from the program that was suspended in 2019, there are people who will have to call in for an interview, even if they meet the criteria, because we'll have some questions about a prior travel history or maybe an arrest record in the United States or something else that we need to clarify. And they will have to come for an interview. If you are qualified for the program and qualified for the visa, we'll send your visa and passport back to you to the DHL site that you selected as part of this initial process. If you are not qualified to renew without an interview, we need to see you. You'll receive your passport and a letter to that effect back, and then you can book a separate appointment to come in for that interview. We do have people who have booked as far out as 2023 or 2024 because we have so few appointments available. Those people, there are instructions on this piece of the website, but I can say that those people are welcome to make sure they qualify first for this program. They'll then need to cancel the current appointment they have, and they can reuse that visa fee, their fee receipt number, to book one of these appointments. Now, if they meet the criteria and are interested in doing that, I would urge them to do it very quickly because, like I said, this is a limited amount of appointments we have for this month. Although it's quite a large number, we have about 10,000 appointments available right now for people to participate in this program, and that's just for February.
Well, to put up your application, you can visit the websites on your screen. And finally on the program, what is a Chinese festival without the lighted lanterns? A sea of them turned Zhejiang City in Sichuan province, known famously for making lanterns, into a fairy tale world to welcome the Lunar New Year. As a time-honored tradition, a lantern festival is held in the city every year to usher in the Lunar New Year. It's a time when streets become a sea of lanterns, which are mostly in red, a color representing good luck for the new year in Chinese culture. People would hang up yellow or red lanterns all over local buildings, which are typical of ancient Chinese architecture styles. Visitors are also often wowed by giant lanterns in all kinds of shapes, including legendary creatures like the dragon. Particularly eye-catching at this year's Lantern Festival are two giant tiger-shaped lights at the entrance to the fair, which are among the most important exhibits as the Lunar New Year is the year of the tiger on China's lunar calendar. Well, a happy Lunar New Year to all our Chinese viewers. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.